Good evening. Welcome to Northbeat. I'm Megan Roberts. The parents of one of the pilots killed in the Fort Smith plane crash say the grief has been unbearable. Tony and Cara Alba cherished their 24-year-old son, Pasolo. They say he was friendly, never got mad, and was always smiling. They also say Pasolo dreamed of being a pilot. Tony and Carol spoke to us today about their beloved son.
I believe, all the tears had dried up, since the day of the tragic accident in January 23rd. It's very, very traumatic and very, very, like it feels like the world shattered. It just no more of continuous of life because Pasolo was, a very young, 24-year-old, and he has a lot of vision, very ambitious person, and so much in the future that he wanted to be at, and it was just shattered and cut like forever. Our beloved son, he was very full of energy, positive energy, very compassionate. That smile that everybody loves and will be missed from now on. He's his friends always said, his friends visited us, a couple of days ago, and they dearly miss Pasolo's, positive energy, because even though that he's one of the, a little bit smaller in height, they followed him as their leader.
He's really a disciplined boy. He's very neat, very kind, always there. You always asked him, you always text him, he always answers back. He's a good son.
Carol and Tony Alba say they want to get as close as they can to the crash site when they go to Fort Smith and light a candle for Pasolo. They're also hoping to visit the places that were important to him in the community as they work towards saying the final goodbyes to their son. One of the first people on the scene of that crash was Gordon Rothney. He's a sergeant with the Canadian Rangers. He's also from Fort Smith. Rothney told us about what it was like to find the crash site and the sole survivor.
I'd sent a scout ahead, and he came across, turned out to be the sole survivor in fairly good condition. So he was ahead, contacted me to let me know that he'd made his way through. And then we were starting to make our way to him, and that there was, there was someone there alive, which filled us with a lot of hope. There was like excitement. I thought, okay, this is going to be okay, My focus was to find anyone who needed our help. And I it became evident that there was nothing we could do. That was difficult. That was the difficult part, I think, for those who were there. Just realizing that there was nothing that we could do. That there was no one we could help. It wasn't until sort of all of our realized that we'd done everything we could do, and once I'd sort of done a quick debrief with the RCMP sergeant, and was 200 yards down the trail, that's when it hits you. Once you have a moment to reflect, then I had to pull over and just let those emotions come out. But when you got a job to do, you gotta, and it's not even putting it aside, you sort of just, you have this focus, you know. It was difficult for me to accept, and this is, I think, what a lot of people are probably struggling with right now, is an acceptance. You know, it's part of the process, right? I mean, at midnight that night, my wife was asking me, you know, because I was just laying there, asking me what was going through my mind, and I just had this desire to go back out, you know, like there was something I may have missed, or even though it's not logical, there's still this incredible desire to do something, you know. So that's the part I think that people, first responders, can struggle with. Yeah.
If you need help during this time, there are several resources available. If you're from Fort Smith, the Northwest Territories Health and Social Services Authority says you should call the Community Counseling Program first. After hours, you can reach out to the Fort Smith Emergency Department to talk to an on-call counselor. You can also call the NWT helpline at 811 or go to the NTHSSA website for a full list of resources, and anyone across the NWT can go to the website for that. All of those numbers and the website are on your screen right now. Iqaluit is hosting a 3-day gathering this week on unmarked burials and missing residential school children. It's being organized by Canada's independent special interlocutor for missing children and unmarked graves and burial sites. Kimberly Murray was appointed in 2022 for a 2-year mandate. She'll identify what the federal government needs to do with respect to unmarked graves and burial sites of children associated with former residential schools. She says one of the barriers Nunavummiut face in finding missing children is accessing historical records.
Most families want to know where the child's buried, do the ceremonies that they want to do, and be able to know that they can go visit their child and put a headstone, lay flowers and toys. And so we've been helping families with that.
Murray says about 200 survivors registered for this week's gathering in Iqaluit, which is the organization's 6th national gathering. Survivors have sharing circles and workshops on how to follow and access records to find missing relatives. The organization will host a closing ceremony this June in Ottawa, where Murray will release her final report. From extreme cold to rain, people in the NWT are getting a bit of weather whiplash this week. Freezing rain hit the Fort Smith area. Yesterday, it hit the North Slave. As Mahnur Mubarak tells us, that has wreaked chaos and havoc on flights and roads in Yellowknife.
The wild weather is impacting people on the roads and in the air. Cars are coated in ice, scrapers are going full tilt, and the streets are slippery. The city of Yellowknife has been spreading salt and sand, hoping to get a grip on the situation. Runaways are also icy, affecting flights over the last couple of days, and that has passengers scrambling. Monique Smith was hoping to fly from Yellowknife to Wekwati. She was headed there to do work as a school counselor. Mother Nature had different plans, and the flight was canceled.
Is one of those frustrations for me. It's like, okay, that's lost time in the community, which means less time with the kids and with the staff, and that's always unfortunate. It's also, lost income, and so but you have to roll with it, even though that's just the reality of the situation.
This warm spell in January isn't normal, and it's hitting many parts of the territory, and one expert says it could be an effect of El Nino, but she thinks we could see more of this in the future.
Model trajectories are showing that the likelihood, not of the El Nino per se, but of these warmer temperatures is set to increase because the Arctic is warming faster than any other region on the planet.
And it looks like this weird weather isn't over yet. The forecast shows it's likely to be above normal for the rest of the week. Mahnur Mubarak, CBC News, Yellowknife.
Emergency preparedness is a priority in the 2024 budget for the city of Whitehorse. Last summer, the city saw a large wildfire break out nearby, and as the climate warms, the Yukon is expected to experience more wildfires. Whitehorse officials say they want to be ready. The deputy mayor gave the city's annual budget address last night. In it, she announced the city will hire a new emergency manager.
This summer, major wildfires in the Yukon and across the country forced the evacuation of communities and devastated others. We continue to see the real-world impacts of climate change, which puts residents at risk. As a growing city, it is our responsibility to invest in emergency preparedness, which is why we will be hiring an emergency management coordinator. This position will give the city the expertise and advice it needs to ensure its emergency response capabilities are in line with the demands of an isolated northern community.
The city also plans to hire 3 new firefighters. The operations budget for this year is approximately $110 million.
Treaty in Cree is Naskomitoin, an oral agreement, and our agreements were always spoken. For George Spence, the core of treaty was Wichihioin, to help one another.
And so we, the commissioners,
He was there for the making of Treaty 9, where the Cree were told,
we will honor this agreement together for as long as the sun shines and the waters flow.
the Cree made their mark because they were assured that the land would be shared and they would always be able to harvest what they needed. George Spence was my great-grandfather. In his life, he saw many promises of the treaty go unfulfilled.
Treaties were essential to the creation of Canada. First Nations still fight for the agreements to be honored.
This is the CFPC's largest detachment, home to elite units, federal and municipal scope. Congratulations on making the cut.
Have you spoken with your father?
We're coming for you and everyone like you.
I would rather be Baroque than blue. There's lots of reasons to not be a cop. And a Surrey girl should know all of them.
Maybe you should reconsider the uniform and everything that it represents.
I'd rather fight from inside it to make a change.
Why, hello. It's me, Seth Rogen. 10 potters will be facing off in the most extraordinary ceramics competition show that this country has ever seen.
I'm Jen Robertson, and I'll be your host.
So are these potters ready?
This exploded.
To test their skills at the wheel and push themselves every week?
Oh, no.
So the ones that do stand out, they really do stand out.
And who will be named champion?
I'm excited to see it. Oh, wow!
Of the Great Canadian Pottery Throwdown.
How can any of this be fair?
Now you might think, hey, we just need more doctors, but that's not really it.
A Russian scheme here
shows you where it starts, where it ends.
Were you really willing to risk that job?
Yes.
At Thunder Bay's favorite festival, Wake the Giant.
Ta-da! There it is.
It appears we have a mystery to solve.
You'll be next.
He's dead.
A murderer was murdered.
Toronto Constabulary, stop!
Here we go.
Make it mini!
I'm gonna push it, let's go.
My hands are shaking.
This is all very overwhelming.
Don't expect anything normal.
I can't believe it. I'm here.
An internationally brokered proposal for a ceasefire in the war in Gaza appears to be stalling. The deal would include a major exchange of Israeli hostages held by Hamas and Palestinians detained by Israel. Hamas is currently going over the proposal, but Israeli officials have already rejected key parts of it. Abby Kugadasan has the details.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has ruled out a full withdrawal from Gaza. He also says they will not release large numbers of Palestinian detainees. The These are two major Hamas demands. These comments from the Israeli Prime Minister follow this weekend's Paris meeting, where officials from the United States, Israel, Qatar, and Egypt worked out a proposal which includes a 45-day-long pause in fighting and reports of Israeli hostages being exchanged for Palestinian detainees. Hamas officials received that proposal today, and its chief confirmed he would visit Cairo for further discussions. It is worth mentioning that earlier today, a far-right member of Netanyahu's coalition government, Ben-Gvir, was threatening to bring down the Israeli government if a reckless deal was made. And the Times of Israel is reporting that the Israeli Defense Minister, Yoav Gallant, told members of the Israeli parliament that the country intends to retain military control of Gaza and run it the same way it does the occupied West Bank. Previously, the U.S. said it rejects both of those possibilities. Netanyahu is under pressure from far-right elements within his government to keep up the military offensive in its current form in Gaza, under pressure domestically from the opposition, which says they will support any deal that brings the hostages home. And Netanyahu's under pressure internationally, too, with a majority of nations calling for a permanent ceasefire. Western nations, including the U.S., Canada, and the UK, support a two-state solution in the long term. British Foreign Secretary David Cameron now says London may recognize the state of Palestine as part of negotiations to ensure movement towards an irreversible peace. Abby Cuevas, CBC News, London.
The federal government has announced it will provide $40 million in funding for humanitarian aid in Gaza. The money will go to United Nations bodies, the Red Cross, and Canadian non-governmental organizations. This comes as Canada joins other nations in suspending funding for the UN's Agency for Palestinian Refugees, known as UNRWA.
The money for Gaza has been dispersed to UNRWA, and they've used it for humanitarian, to deliver much-needed humanitarian aid and education and other duties that UNRWA has on the ground, and they've done good work over the years. But the long-term support is carried out over a number of years, and that, of course, will be impacted by this pause.
More than a dozen countries have suspended funding for UNRWA following Israeli allegations that 12 of the agency's workers took part in the October 7th attacks. 9 staffers have been fired, and the UN is investigating. UN officials and other aid organizations have called for the funding to be restored. Canadian authorities are investigating a data security breach at Global Affairs Canada. This is in response to the detection of malicious cyber activity affecting the internal network used by staff. The breach affects at least 2 internal drives, along with emails, calendars, and employee contact information. Some employees have been told to stop working remotely. CBC has seen 3 internal emails sent to Global Affairs staff. One of them indicates that internal systems were vulnerable between December 20th and January 24th. It's not clear whether secret information was lost in the breach. The federal government's $10 a day childcare program is facing fresh criticism. Some say the funding for the plan is insufficient and putting a strain on operators. Daycare centres in Alberta are protesting by initiating rolling closures. The province's Minister of Family and Children's Services says he's looking into all options to end the protest.
Well, I'm disappointed that there's a very small group of operators here in the province of Alberta that have decided to take this approach.
The Association of Alberta Childcare Entrepreneurs is calling for emergency funding and a re-evaluation of some of the program's policies. Operators in some other provinces are threatening to pull out of the national childcare system or close their doors. They say the program limits the fees they can charge while not providing enough support to cover all their costs. Ottawa says the provinces and territories signed on with eyes wide open, and it's up to them to make the program work. A bagel shop in Montreal has teamed up with a cream cheese producer to create a bagel with no hole. Is it the introduction of a baked good a sign of progress? Or, as one local newspaper wondered, is this a sign of the apocalypse? Sarah Levitt takes a look at the debate.
Here in Montreal, we pride ourselves on our bagels. Usually the question is, which bagel is better, Saint-Viateur or Fairmount? But a new ad campaign from Philadelphia Cream Cheese has us asking, What actually is a bagel?
A very precise, good bagel will have a hole but also have a texture that's kind of chewy yet not really heavy, and it can't be bready.
Philadelphia Cream Cheese has teamed up with bagel shops in the United States, as well as here in Saint Viateur, for this campaign that they're calling Philadelphia Bagel Holes. Now that's holes with a W. The idea being that you can put more cream cheese on it if there is no hole in the bagel.
There's no hole, it's not a bagel.
It's all in the taste.
And?
Excuse me, it rocks. No hole, but hey, I'll take a dozen of these to go.
It needs to have a hole. No hole, no bagel.
For those interested, these bagels have to be made in separate batches because they do take longer to make. Saint Viateur says after this 2-week campaign, they're not so sure they'll continue to offer them. Sarah Levitt, CBC News, Montreal.
It might be the most unique ice shack in Canada. A group of friends in Saskatchewan have converted an old airplane into an ice fishing hut. It has seats, heat, and a bird's eye view of fish down below. Take a look.
All right, I'll head inside. We got 2 diesel heaters in the back that run some ducting down along here that we drilled holes in so it keeps the floor nice and dry and your feet warm. We got catch covers over our holes here. These just pop out so you can fish through the floor there. And then they go back on so no kids fall through. We got bench seats, and each of our bench seat has folds up so we can got some storage under here, which is pretty nice to keep things out of the way. We have, in case we ever have a fire, we got the emergency exit working. We just pop this out and leave on the wing. We got up at the front here, we got the cockpit. We have the steering wheels and controls and everything still function. You can move them around. The kids love to play at the front here, pretend like they're flying. We got some floor lighting and overhead lighting. We can adjust the colors in here and everything too, so we can make it pretty fancy in the evenings. Next year we'll probably do the interior. We just didn't have time to get the interior finished, so it's just spray foam walls right now, but likely do some pine or something. A few things are still temporary, but we just wanted to get it out and usable this year.
And that is Northbeat for tonight. For news anytime, go to cbc.ca/north. Thank you for watching. I'm Megan Roberts. Have a good night.
What do I like? I like open fires, moonlit nights, chatty letters, rainy days. I like daydreaming. I love this colorful little island of ruby, emerald, and sapphire. Yet often my dark moods come. I'm possessed body and soul by this depression. They say women shouldn't write. Some days I almost give up. But I cannot contain my imagination. I made Anne real. I gave her my love of nature, my love of books, and my childhood dreams. My greatest happiness would be to climb the alpine path and write upon it a woman's humble name.
Lucy Maud Montgomery battled depression, rejection, and sexism to become known around the world for Anne of Green Gables and 19 other novels.
Closing this case gets you one step closer to you getting back on the squad and keeping you out of prison.
You're not a detective, you're a con artist. You have a driver's license, right?
Of course, I have 9. If you couldn't be a cop, what would you be?
Nothing. My dad raised me to be a cop. That's who I am. Stay here.
You're adorable.
You guys are making this entire station look like a circus.
He's busy trying to solve a murder. What are you doing?
Thanks for having my back.
Look at you.
Is this your girlfriend? This is not my girlfriend.
She's way too cool to be your girlfriend.
She's not way too cool to be my girlfriend.
Knock, knock!
Who's that?
He's fired!
I'm starting to think you don't know what a joke is.
You're gonna eat nothing but raw spleen.
Getting into peak physical shape is 50% training, 50% diet.
Never occurred to me to bring lawn chairs out here. Never occurred to the Egyptians to build the pyramids until it did.
Oh! Simpler times.
Let's set you up with a lunch date. You're deaf? I don't know sign.
This feels a little wrong.
If accessibility is wrong, we don't want to be right.
Spicy. Oh, do tell.
Breaking news. The critics are talking. Oh, this is it. Imagine the Wonder Years if it were written by Gene Shepard. They twisted it all up.
No, you can't trust a newsman.
Highly recommended.
Onwards.
Onwards.
Heartwarming.
This doesn't mean I'm better than anyone here tonight. It just says it.
100% fresh.
Well, I suppose we don't need to get rid of the cable right this second.
Son of a Critch.
You look like a cod gasping for air.
Name something you see people do on TV that you secretly could do better.
Host.
I knew that was hard.
Family Feud Canada. Watch free on CBC Gen.
We want you to know that you can ask us anything. Need help with your Riz?
You just made Riz uncool. There is something that's been bothering me. Are mutual funds or ETFs better for my long-term goals?
Every week, the issues that matter to Canadians.
These are acts of desperation.
Connecting politics to people.
Some people have lost everything.
Join me for Rosemary Barton Live.
We fought our way through Italy and then headed for Amsterdam, sweeping for Germans along the way. Our worst fear was to catch a bullet in these last hours of the war.
I was 15 when the Nazis invaded the Netherlands. More than 100,000 Dutch Jews never came home. Our men were put into forced labor. By 1945, we were starving. The food drops gave us hope. And then, the Canadians came.
Before Amsterdam, I couldn't have explained why we were there, all those years away from home. But the Dutch showed us why it mattered.
Papa wanted me to bring some soldiers home to thank them personally. And that's when I first saw Wilf. And I invited him over that afternoon.
Marguerite Blaise married Lieutenant Wilf Gildersleeve. They moved to Vancouver, where they raised 8 children. Today, the Dutch still remember the Canadians who liberated them.
Wait.
It's a ceremony?
And Your Majesty may be pleased to know that this year, thanks to the help of our Indian friends, we have produced some 30,000 pounds of this sweet gift.